Well, the Finance Minister announced that there'll be no increases to personal income tax and value-added tax, or VAT for short. Well, to discuss the tax implications and what it means for you and I, joined in the studio now by Tax Director at Deloitte. That's Musa Manyathi. Mr. Manyathi, good morning, and thank you very much for your time. I guess many people sort of sigh. Let's start with the personal tax one. Many people sort of were relieved to hear there'll be no kind of effective increase. It's only just the inflationary related.
Yeah, that's actually right. And I think the minister has realized something that somebody actually once said, and that no nation has taxed itself into any prosperity. So it's been very critical for the minister this time around to actually look broadly what has happened in the last 3-4 years. Because what we have seen is that there has been a lot of tax rate increases. For example, VAT went up, PAYE went up, CGT went up. So we are at a level now where it actually would have been very difficult for the minister to introduce any new taxes. But also, it's important to understand that because of the economy where we are and the absence of any growth, we actually wouldn't have been surprised at all if there was any tax rate increases.
Yes, and the VAT was like a big one. People were saying if you touch VAT, you're touching the vulnerable in society as well, unless, of course, you zero rate many more products, which is a little bit tough to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, there were even speculation that VAT could go up by 1%, but the minister has obviously proved all of that wrong.
Yes, I mean, I also see that on a good footing there on tax-wise, the tax-free savings allowance has been up by 9%.
Yeah, no,
that annual 30,000 is now gone up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what has happened is that the minister has actually reduced the taxes for the people that are at the lower income levels, which is great for the economy, but also for families, because then it's putting more money on the table for them.
Yes, but hey, fuel levy, from a tax perspective, I mean, they call it a fuel levy, but it's a form of tax.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. But that's the one that we have accustomed now to, knowing that it's always going to happen. So it's actually just getting ready for that when it happens again. So we were, in fact, expecting that.
I mean, you look at that 63 billion rand tax revenue shortfall, and you just wonder how you make up that big gap in a tight situation where, as you correctly said, you can't tax a nation to prosperity.
So let's take one step back. I mean, if you look at what happened last year, there was a huge tax fall. And again this year. And you can't look at that in isolation. You need to look at that in the context of where SARS is coming from, the destabilization that the institution has gone through. And this is just the culmination, really, of the tough situation that SARS has been going through. So because also of the lack of economic growth and the absence of any activities in the economy, that's why it's becoming even harder and harder for SARS to collect taxes. But the organization now is in a stable path. So one would expect that 63 billion may start coming down if also something is starting to happen in the economy.
Yeah, I mean, the sin taxes are also a yearly bread. We know they go up. But what about corporate tax rate? I read somewhere that in the rest of the African continent, corporate tax is lower. The reason being that you are enabling small to medium businesses that when they do come into a profitable situation, they don't have to pay high taxes, but then they manage to use the money, recapitalize their businesses, grow more and employ more people. Should he have lowered the corporate tax, or is 28% at an optimal level?
Interestingly, the minister himself actually said, and this is the truth, that the corporate tax is at a higher level compared to our trading partners. You look at the UK, you look at Germany, you look at the US, even in Africa, some of, like Botswana, for example. So the corporate tax rate is actually low. So there wasn't necessarily an expectation that that was going to be reduced. But it is interesting that there are two things that are relevant to the corporate tax. The one thing is that the minister is actually saying, watch the space, because he's thinking in the near future that there may be a reduction in the corporate tax rate, but something will need to happen before we get to that. The other interesting development, which actually is a change in the tax policy, is around the utilization of tax losses. So what happens here is that if you have a company that was trading, conducting its business, and the come end of the financial year, the company has more expenses than the taxable income. So that then will be an assessed loss that is carried forward. And it has been like that for a long time. Now, what the minister is proposing, and this is actually very creative on his part, is that you are now not going to be able to utilize all your taxable income to use your assessed loss. So now you are only going to be able to use 80% of your taxable income, which is a huge change in policy, because that's not what has been the case before.
Okay, but overall, the implications of this budget, I mean, you heard me in the intro there that Fitch, the ratings agency, has been scathing about the statement. I haven't read the whole Fitch statement, but we know that Moody's, I think it's next month that they're going to be doing the review. They are the only ratings agencies that still have us rated above junk status in terms of our sovereign credit rating. Implications wise, I mean, of this thing for ratings agencies, for this budget as an overall level.
Yeah. So again, let's take one step back. We know that the rating agencies have been very vocal about the level of the government debt. We also know that they've been very vocal around the expenditure and how it is widening and how we are not able to collect the amount of taxes that should be helping the country. So the minister has now tried to reach a compromise, to meet them halfway and say, look, in the next 3 years, I'm anticipating that there is going to be a reduction of about 160 billion of the wage to the public sector. And of course, we would expect that to a certain extent, that should go a long way in appeasing some of the rating agencies. But we know those guys are actually very tough, and we've already had comments that they are even not sure that some of what the minister has indicated is going to be implemented. So it's a question of wait and see what really happens.